The opportunity zones have grown in this country. The latest number, 8,761, last opened in Spokane, Washington, many more to go. Most people wouldn't think of Spokane, Washington, when you talk about, as you have done on the campaign trail, Mr. President, those that have been left behind, they think of urban centers. But you've looked at the country as a whole. And for someone who was attacked so much for being not for the black community, not for women, not for whatever community in the identity politics world, you've delivered, and you've put people in place to deliver for the American people. So let's respond to them first.
Well, first of all, I really appreciate your statement and your question. And to be honest, it's all about the country. It's whether it's Spokane, whether it's Brooklyn, New York, it doesn't make any difference. We have thousands of places now that nobody would have touched. They've been forgotten. I talked about the forgotten men and women in the last campaign, the whole thing with how forgotten they were. Well, the inner cities have been forgotten, and a lot of African American people, Hispanic people have been totally forgotten. And we have changed this around. And by the way, your friend Tim Scott has been a great help. He is really somebody that when it came to opportunity zones, he was right there. He fought all the way. And the results are far greater than we thought. You see that. I mean, the numbers are incredible. We have the best unemployment numbers now in the country, the best we've ever had. We have the most people working in the country than we've ever had. We have almost 160 million people working, and we have a lot of people going in the opportunity zones, and it's terrific. It's areas that they would not have, we have money going in, we have investments going in, we have people going in, hiring other people. Salaries are up 8% at a minimum in the opportunity zones right now from what they were, more than any other place in the country as a group.
In a place where poverty is typically double the rate plus, you've literally, put a team together. And this is important. I want the American people to understand a workshop and a results-oriented approach to tackling these issues, not helicoptering in government to do the job.
It's private people going in, spending a tremendous amount of money. It emanates from the tax cuts because we got the largest tax cuts for the people of the country in history. But a lot of the money is going into opportunity zones. These are people that were never given a chance. And they really, I talk about it and nobody really thought I was going to do it. And I've had great help from certain senators and certain others. Tim is one I mentioned, but from many of the senators, Republican senators, we've had tremendous help. But we have it approved, we have it done, and it's up and operating, and it's far more successful than we ever thought possible.
So many people in America said, what are you going to do when you say, what have you got to lose? And I'll, leave that up to the rest of them. But you also haven't left out anyone, including tribal governments, the local partnerships that have been made. We don't often hear about that.
It's interesting because you say, what have you got to lose? And I was doing okay, but not great with the African American community. And I was doing a speech, a lot of African Americans in the audience, and we were talking about crime rates and education rates and poverty rates and home ownership percentages. And they were like last in everything. It was so bad and it was so unfortunate. And I'm reading it and I just said, listen, you've been with the Democrats always. It was automatic for 100 years. For over 100 years, they've been with the Democrats who led the cities and led them into bad situations. I said, what the hell do you have to lose? Sometimes I use what the hell, and sometimes I just say, what do you have to lose? But it was always much more exciting when I say, what the hell do you have to lose? By going with me. And that increased my poll numbers incredibly with the African American community to a point that was, many times what I was getting. I couldn't believe what I was getting, and we did very well. Now, I'd like to do much better. But as a Republican, it's not easy, and we did very well, as you know. And now we have the unemployment rates are the lowest in history for African American, for Hispanic, for Asian,
for women.
Women are 61 years, soon to be historic. Historic meaning in history, and that'll be great. But it's been incredible. The biggest number is that we have more people working today than ever in the history of our country, almost 160 million. So when you hear that, And then you couple it with the opportunity zones where, and this is very much inner city stuff. These are places that they were languishing for decades and decades. You know this, and I know you have a lot of fans in those communities, and so do I think. But I think I have a lot more now than I had maybe even at the election, because we're putting people to work that it was never going to happen. They never really were given that chance, and now we're putting people to work. So a lot of friends of mine that are African American said, I can't believe you're the guy that did this. I said, well, you know me. And they go, yeah, I do, and I'm not that surprised. But the fact is that this is something that's going to be great for the black community.
One of the attacks clearly coming from someone who hopes to be president, Bernie Sanders, has been going after you on this and a number of issues. You also stood up and said, we are not and we will not be a socialist country. And I'm paraphrasing. I can never quote you, but I will paraphrase for you. What do you say to Bernie Sanders and the, quote, socialist Democrats in the field and the response to the attacks against you?
Well, you look at Venezuela, you look at these socialist countries, they're all failing or failed, and most of them are just like a total disaster. And that's pure socialism. And with Bernie's, they want to take the wealth that all of the people have made, 401ks, you have 401ks, we all have 401ks, and they're at record levels. They've done better than they've ever done. They want to just dissipate it. And, socialism's easier to sell when the country's doing incredibly well. In 10 years, this country would be destroyed if we ever went that way. It would be absolutely destroyed. You could forget about opportunity zones. You could forget about your ownership in companies, because a lot of people own stock in the big companies. The big companies are really companies owned by lots of people. And whether they have stock or whether they have funds, it really goes right down to people that are small-time investors and big-time investors. But our country's doing so well, and if we ever went socialistic, if we ever became a socialist country, you could write off this country. This country would go down so fast. And I hear what Bernie says, and I hope I get an opportunity to run against him, because it'll be so easy to show whether it's his health care that's a disaster. It's a disaster. Interestingly, they tried to do it in Vermont, and the governor of Vermont, he'd do anything Bernie told him to do. Not only couldn't they make it work, I think it was more money than the whole state took in, the cost, and basically it's socialized medicine. If you think about it, it's socialized medicine. So we'll have our chance, I think, to debate. I think I put out yesterday, it could be Bernie and it could be Biden, and I think Sleepy Joe's going to have a hard time. He's 1% Joe. I don't think he's going to make it, and I don't know that maybe Bernie has the most spirit over there right now. Could be the mayor from Indiana. I think I'd like running against him too. But it'll be interesting to see it unfold. It'll be very interesting. A lot of times you can't tell, as you know better than anybody, you're a great pro. And by the way, you have been so nice to me, and I appreciate it very much. Hence, I'm doing an interview with you, and we're not doing it with too many people. But it'll be interesting to see it unfold. You never know what happens. And being in politics for me has been a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun to watch it all play out, but we've got serious business for the country. And Mr. President, thank you for your time.
Well, thank you. And you are a professional, and you're just as good on television. And I don't know, I think maybe better, if you want to know the truth. You have a face that was made for television.
I think I can trust the guy who knows television just a little bit.
Yeah, but no, you do great. And you've been my friend, and I appreciate David very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.